Arsenal left with one choice to end nightmare and keep title dream alive. One of those games where, as entertaining as it ended up, it's hard not to look to those who weren't on the pitch. That isn't even Bukayo Saka, who had to go off injured. It is, of course, Liverpool, with the leaders having extended the gap over both Manchester City and Arsenal this weekend. Arne Slot's side will certainly feel more satisfied about this 1-1 draw at Stamford Bridge than either of the teams involved. Despite positives for both, Enzo Maresca sounded happier than Mikel Arteta, as he enthusiastically spoke about how good the performance was. It was still another big game they couldn't quite win, even as Chelsea now sit in third for the first time in 3 years. Very soon we're going to win this kind of game, Maresca added. Arteta inevitably described himself as disappointed, but proud. Arsenal stopped the rot, scored for the first time in 3 games and actually moved back into the top 4 due to results elsewhere. They will still feel they left something out there, not least 2 points. Marc Cucurella, by contrast, can feel he put everything in. He set the tone for a resolute Chelsea performance that also saw them come from behind. The only real error in an encouraging defensive display was in the chasm left for Gabriel Martinelli's goal. But part of that was how the returning Martin Odegaard created the opening with a typically creative pass. This is what Arsenal have badly missed. It would have been symbolic if Odegaard's full return brought a first league win in over a month. That's probably what should have happened, to propel momentum again. Instead, Saka's late injury seemed to sum up Arsenal's season. A positive is instantly offset by a negative. Arteta said he's praying for no more injuries, as he described a nightmare of late, before all but confirming that Saka and Declan Rice won't be on international duty this week, and then stating that he has to talk with Odegaard about whether he will join up for Norway. The playmaker completed the full 90 minutes, with Arteta marvelling that he is one of the few who can do that. It would still cause some anxiety at Arsenal if he immediately went off for Nations League games, given they're what put Odegaard out for so long in the first place. There could be a high number of dropouts right across the Premier League. Cole Palmer is another doubt. In general play, it was almost literally one step forward and one back for Arsenal, given the number of times their attack was caught offside. Such moments cost them a Kai Havertz opener and at least 2 promising attacks. And yet it would be wrong to say Chelsea were lucky. For one, that is a very intentional part of Enzo Maresca's approach. Chelsea also fought for everything, as distilled in Pedro Neto's brilliant equaliser. He had been threatening it for much of the game and finally hit his first league goal for Chelsea once he moved onto the right wing. The finish was superb, drilled low into the corner. David Raya, who had again been so strong, this time had no chance. Arteta didn't quite see it like that, as he castigated his team for going against all their habits by allowing so much space at the edge of the box. That's where he felt the game was drawn, at least, as he again lamented the inability to hold a lead. It wasn't too far off what happened at the other end for the opening goal by Martinelli. Aside from the space offered up by Chelsea's defence, the Brazilian was then able to casually pick his spot as Robert Sanchez left his near post open. The finish was good, but it probably shouldn't have come down to that. The game consequently came down to details. Saka had been relatively quiet before he went off, mostly due to Cucurella's approach. Chelsea's Spanish fullback was an obvious man of the match. His fellow Euro 2024 winner, Mikel Merino, came off the bench to also be a real positive for Arsenal. He might have scored with yet another chance when the ball flashed across the Chelsea box. But that was the only moment when the midfielder wasn't supremely assured on the ball. Merino was excellent in possession, tidying everything up while making things happen elsewhere. There is promise in a potential partnership with Odegaard. The game did emphasize something obvious but worth saying. The Norwegian is simply unique as a player. Arsenal have no one like him, which is why he is so essential. Chelsea, of course, have that in Palmer, but other than one long-range effort and a few touches, he was quiet. Neto was instead the player who was most active for Chelsea. It still ended up as one of those matches where it is difficult to say anything definitively, which also feels the case with a strange Premier League table at the moment, at least for the 19 spots beneath first place. Liverpool's relentless winning form has been the only certainty. But that leads to another question that was relevant to everything happening at Stamford Bridge. Is it sustainable? Can they really keep it going? The only reason it's hard to say is because this is a new era. There is no precedent under slot on which to base anything. Just the results so far. And there is a difference between getting them before Christmas and after Christmas. There's also a difference between Feyenoord and Liverpool. It was conspicuous when Maresca was asked about not yet winning big games. And he name-checked only City and Arsenal. The Chelsea manager pointed to how they have had a long time under their coaches. That's why it might seem different if it was one of those two clubs going on Liverpool's run. They've been there for the last few years. But Arsenal currently feel like they've lost something from that period. Arteta was unusually frank when he described this period as a nightmare. That was also, however, a call to wake up. When it gets nasty, show your teeth, Arteta said. Show how much you want it. When it's Disneyland, everything is easy. The demand is now obvious. Win, 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 win. That's the run Arsenal now need. Given one conclusive fact from this game, they're 9 points behind. They have shown they can make up these gaps before. They won as recently as last season. They now need to do it in different circumstances. In a campaign with so many uncertainties.
It may be the way all Manchester United managers imagine their reign ending. With Old Trafford chorusing their name. With a beloved figure standing in the centre circle. Applauding all four stands in turn before going to the Stretford end to soak up their adulation, now and again. It actually happens. But only of late. When they are caretaker managers. Celebrated for their playing days. Their brief tenures a chance to wallow in the past. Ruud van Nistelrooy filled the gap between Erik ten Hag and Ruben Amorim with fine results. Yet reality tends to descend for the permanent managers, even though Van Nistelrooy has brought a restorative feel to Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro as well as the results and the atmosphere. Amorim takes over a club 13th in the Premier League and 15th in the Europa League. What hasn't changed is that this club has to get back to where it belongs, said Fernandes. And United have rarely been further away in the modern era. Arguably. No manager has taken over United at a lower ebb since Sir Alex Ferguson in 1986. If the precedents are good, the job is hard. Perhaps it is made harder by the circumstances. David Moyes, Louis van Gaal, Jose Mourinho and Ten Hag all took charge in the summer off-season. Able to end a transfer window with some signings if not necessarily as many or all they wanted. Amorim has at least 11 games to navigate without arrivals and with a squad that doesn't seem to suit him, or, some might say, any other manager. I can't comment on that, said Van Nistelrooy when asked if the group of players fits Amorim's style. He persisted with the Ten Hag-esque 4-2-3-1 rather than attempting to introduce the Portuguese's preferred 3-4-3. In particular, United seem to lack natural wing-backs, all the full-backs feel more equipped to feature in a back four, while Amorim's definition of an inside forward will be instructive. He plays a shape without an orthodox number 10 and United's outstanding individual, Fernandes, is a number 10. Now, too. He is in form. Bruno is back producing, said Van Nistelrooy. That is part of his legacy. So, too, is the sight of Manuel Ugarte as a regular presence. The Uruguayan started every game for Van Nistelrooy. As many for the interim as he did for Ten Hag, who scarcely seemed to trust the summer signing. Amad Diallo has been another beneficiary of the Van Nistelrooy fortnight, but with Alejandro Garnacho feeling unable to celebrate his spectacular goal against Leicester because of criticism from fans. Another youthful winger needs rejuvenating, and individually, plenty of players require attention. Victor Gyökeres scored 66 goals in 68 games for Amorim at Sporting, whereas Joshua Zirkzee, with none in his last 16 for United, seemed to have abandoned all interest in scoring, and Rasmus Højlund is playing himself out of form. In defense, Diogo Dalot was excellent last season but troubled this. There may soon, finally, be scope to rest him. Both Luke Shaw and Lenny Yoro are back in training. The latter a Ten Hag by who never played for Ten Hag. So far, Nasser Mazraoui is the closest to being a success of the 5 summer signings. The other price tags were hefty, but United spent £200 million in the summer and scarcely look like they have been injected with £200 million of quality. If there is something intriguing in what Amorim makes of his inheritance, it bears Ten Hag's imprint. Of the 22 players to appear for United in the Premier League this season, 12 joined under the Dutchman. One of those. Mason Mount. Never suited a position in Ten Hag's tactics but at least flourished in a 3-4-3 formation for Thomas Tuchel at Chelsea. Amorim begins in an international break and has more players to work with immediately because some, such as Casemiro, Antony, Mount and Marcus Rashford, have lost their places in their country's plans. That, too, reflects United's travails, so his is an uphill task. Van Nistelrooy at least lent some clarity of thought and some wins. But he had 4 games. 3 of them relatively easy and all at home. 5 of Amorim's first 8 are away. 3 of the next 5 league matches are against sides currently in the top 5. He is playing catch-up when presumably trying to implement a different system. With a group of players who routinely looked out-coached in Ten Hag's final 14 months. Appearing disjointed against teams with a superior blueprint. Too often United have lacked tactical cohesion. There are questions if the squad has sufficient running power, to press, to play a high defensive line, to track back with the diligence a micromanager can demand. Van Nistelrooy has steadied the ship. Now comes a voyage into the unknown for Amorim. This block of 4 games. It felt like a closure and the future is open, said Van Nistelrooy. He was talking about his own situation but the same applies to United. And Amorim will have to excel if his last game at Old Trafford comes with the sort of reception afforded to Van Nistelrooy. Ruud van Nistelrooy has left Manchester United. The club has confirmed. With Ruben Amorim beginning his reign at Old Trafford this week as it became clear there was no room for the Dutchman on Amorim's backroom staff, the United legend took charge following the sacking of Erik ten Hag and guided the Red Devils to victory in his final game against Leicester on Sunday to set up the Portuguese coach during the international break. Van Nistelrooy, who had won 3 of his 4 games in interim charge, had been keen to stay on at Old Trafford under the new boss, but after Amorim flew to Manchester on Monday, and with the Portuguese expected to bring 2 assistant managers with him from Sporting CP, United announced the departure of Van Nistelrooy and 3 more of Ten Hag's coaches. Van Nistelrooy, who managed PSV Eindhoven in the 2023-23 season, returned to Old Trafford in the summer and said United was the only club where he would accept a job as an assistant. The 48-year-old, who has admitted he wants to manage United one day in his own right, went unbeaten in his time as the caretaker and has the highest win percentage, at 75, of anyone to take charge of the club. He was popular with the players, with Casemiro saying he was a legend and it was a pleasure to work with him. He said on Sunday that he expected to have talks with Amorim on Monday, but the day ended with him leaving. The club said in a statement, Manchester United can confirm that Ruud van Nistelrooy has left the club. Ruud rejoined in the summer and has taken charge of the team for the past 4 matches as interim head coach. Ruud is, and always will be, a Manchester United legend. We are grateful for his contribution and the way in which he has approached his role throughout his time with the club. He will always be very welcome at Old Trafford. René Haake, Jelle ten Rouwelaar and Peter Morel have also departed and we wish them all well for the future. Haake, Ten Hag's other assistant, joined in the summer from Go Ahead Eagles, where he was manager. Van Rouwelaar, another who was only at Old Trafford for a few months, was the goalkeeping coach while Morel was a performance analyst. While United are yet to confirm Amorim's backroom staff, they have set the scene for appointments by letting the 4 Dutchmen go.
Tottenham's big problem: Daniel Levy does not care about winning. It was at the end of September that Daniel Levy was asked to list his top 3 achievements as Tottenham Hotspur chairman and replied with reaching the Champions League final, opening the stadium and employing some good players. No mention of the 2008 Carling Cup success, the only trophy Tottenham have won since Levy has been at the club, which supporters who are desperate for silverware were quick to pick up on. Levy was talking at a fans forum and was on stage with head coach Ange Postecoglou and club captain Son Heung-min, who apologized to fans after Sunday's miserable defeat by Ipswich Town. Son, one of the best Premier League players of his era, will have spent a decade at Tottenham next year, but he still has not got a single winner's medal for all his years of near-exemplary service. That could still change this season, with Tottenham, despite their defeat by Galatasaray, looking good in the Europa League and still in the Carabao Cup, what used to be the old Carling Cup, after knocking out Manchester City. One can only assume that a Carabao Cup success would not be enough to break into Levy's top three. A Europa League might be, given it earns qualification to the Champions League. But winning has not appeared to be the be-all and end-all at Tottenham for well over 20 years now. It should be a source of profound embarrassment to Levy that for all the excellent players he has employed, Harry Kane and Gareth Bale were the two he picked out, Tottenham have not won more than a solitary League Cup under his watch. Which brings us nicely to watchers of the timepiece variety and the revelation by Hugo Lloris that the Tottenham squad who reached the final of the 2018-2019 Champions League, of which Son was a member, were given watches with the word finalist engraved into the back of them. That was the moment Lloris claims in his autobiography to have known that Levy and Tottenham were not in it for the winning. And after a defeat by Ipswich Town, fans are once again playing the club's favourite game of whose fault is it anyway? Postecoglou defended Tottenham over the Lloris comments, claiming that the broader view was that it could have been a very successful period for the club. Maybe it would have been if the club had not become the first in history not to sign a single player in the summer before Tottenham's Champions League final appearance. Or if Levy had backed Mauricio Pochettino, rather than sacking him just 6 months after it. Postecoglou accepted responsibility for Tottenham's inconsistency after the Ipswich defeat, and it was the head coach who appeared to be on the end of some choice words from an angry fan as he headed down the tunnel. No trophy for top 4 finish. Asked at the same fans forum about how he handles criticism, Levy claimed, "I have a very thick skin and I just ignore it. It makes me want to be more successful." He was not asked how he would define successful. It would be interesting to hear if Levy's interpretation of the word is different to that of Postecoglou, who recently responded to the suggestion some people see a top 4 finish as being as good as a trophy with, but there isn't a trophy. Maybe somebody needs to tell Levy that his world-class stadium is not a trophy. Just as the striking mural of Harry Kane on the way into it from White Hart Lane train station is not either, and, apart from the watches he handed out, there is no silverware for reaching a final. Much has been made, largely by himself, of Postecoglou's record of winning trophies in his second seasons at clubs. But is he going to be another manager who finds that Tottenham is the exception to the rule? Jose Mourinho won trophies before and after his Tottenham experience, while Antonio Conte is top of the Serie A table with Napoli, the first club he has worked at since leaving Levy behind. Supporters have an entire international break in which to go back and forth over the familiar Tottenham blame game. But the fact remains there has only been one constant during the 20-plus years in which Tottenham have managed to win a single trophy that does not even figure in the chairman's top 3. Thank you so much for watching the video. Your support truly means a lot. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing for more content. Your time and feedback are greatly appreciated.